In the summer of 1994, 4 teens entered an abandoned building in Gravesend, Brooklyn. It was the last time they would be seen alive. With few clues and no witnesses, the case went cold. But for Anthony Brewer, the brother of one of the victims, the search never stopped. In 2024, he acquired evidence from the police that contained DNA samples that didn't match the teens. That discovery put his life and the life of his family in grave danger. Goosebumps, The Vanishing. All episodes now available on Disney Plus and Hulu on disneyplus.disney.com. Rated TV 14LB.
Guys, how are you? Welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and we today are talking about why we stick out so long in relationships or friendships or even jobs. What is actually going on? What's the driving force behind us not making a decision, right? Developing a higher pain tolerance than what we should. And with Valentine's Day coming up, I know that it could be a very interesting time for a multitude of reasons, but I just want you to ask yourself a simple question. Do I love myself? And before you answer right away and say, yeah, of course I love myself, I want you to really take your time with that, because what I talk about in this episode may indicate something else, may indicate there is a level of love you could stand to have more of that you may not have reached yet. So we're going to get into this, okay? If you're home, find someplace comfortable, relax, breathe, release your shoulders. I just released my shoulders because I realized that they were like up by my ears. And if you're driving, wear your seatbelt and get some water. All right, stay tuned. Hey, y'all, how are you? Just take a moment to check in and really ask yourself, how am I? How am I feeling today? What's going on in my head? What's going on in my heart? What are my biggest fears right now at the moment? What am I aggravated about? What am I angry about? What am I holding on to that I should probably release, even if it's people? So I was having a conversation with a couple of my clients this week, and we were really just talking about history versus the health of a relationship, or just being mindful of the people that we hold on to, right? In terms of what we are desiring from a person for what they are exhibiting. Okay. And a lot of times when people are like, oh yeah, well, if we just look at life, a lot of times we will complain about a person and what they do before we make an active action towards changing, even if it just looks like communication. But what happens when you're communicating and you recognize that nothing's happening really, right? They say it in the moment, but then they go back to doing exactly what you've addressed and you express hurts you. And now it becomes a repetitive pattern. The thing about it is we are creatures of habit. So people will find discomfort in changing their behavior if up until this point they haven't seen an issue with it. They haven't seen an issue with it, right? You may have, but they may not have seen an issue with it. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times people are not being affected by their behavior. Even if they know that their behavior is affecting you, they may not see it as an issue because they are not experiencing it in that moment. Now, we're all sensitive, right? We all have feelings. We all have things that affect us. And sometimes the very thing that you're talking about affects you, affects that person as well. But again, since they are the ones that are dishing out that behavior, it doesn't bother them as much because it's not happening to them. And when we, on our end, recognize that there is a level of mistreatment or poor behavior, we still stick around. right? And it's that whole mindset of I'll leave when I'm ready. A lot of times people are waiting for the last straw to really kind of have that moment of expression and freedom, or whatever you want to call it, to really air their grievances, if you will. And something that's very important to understand is the art of duality, right? A lot of times there's this belief that if I love myself more, that means that I have to hate you now. Or the only way for me to walk away from you is I have to hate you first. And that's not the case. Actually, that should never be the case. The thing that I realized about myself, and I think I was telling this to someone recently, there's no one in my life that I hate. There's no one that I've crossed paths with that I ever hated. Now, if you ask me what the relationship with a lot of those people looks like, I would tell you that is non-existent. But there's no hate there, because for me, I'm blessed that I was never taught to hate people. I don't know how to do that, right? And because I don't know how to do that, and because I don't want to learn how to do that, I will remove myself or the other person from the equation before it gets to that. The reason why is because hating someone is so much energy. That means that you have to remind yourself, you have to ingrain into your head, you have to feel negative feelings constantly. You are literally hurting yourself, and you think that this is going to hurt someone else. That doesn't work. So again, the question is, do I really love myself? Because if I love myself, I won't subject myself to certain experiences, visceral experiences, to get my point across. Right? I can lovingly leave. Okay. But the thing about it is that people don't want to feel guilty about the decision of walking away from someone. People don't want to feel the level of discomfort. People don't want to grieve the relationship if it comes to an end. Right. So the alternative to that is I need to hate you, because if I'm angry, if I'm filled with rage, I can leave in a storm, right? I can trash this place and I can walk away and feel good and feel vindicated, because I don't want to feel uncomfortable about what I need to say or do, or I don't want to feel uncomfortable, or I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable by me coming to you and being like, hey, this hurt me. Right? So when we're angry, we don't really care. But you have to realize, to be that angry means that you're not caring. You're not caring about yourself. Being that angry and getting to that point of discomfort and malice and what's the word I'm looking for? Just uneasiness, unsettling. It makes your stomach hurt. It makes your head hurt, right? It makes your heart rate increase. That raises your blood pressure. You're doing all of that just to tell a person, hey, you hurt me. This behavior is not okay, right? Because we're always ready for a fight. And sometimes, truth be told, people won't really fight us on it. People will... how do I explain this? A lot of times, or not a lot of times, what I have experienced is a lot of times people will fight to justify their behavior. And when you understand that somebody is doing that, there's no fight. There's no fighting for the relationship. That's what I've realized. Because if I'm telling you that something hurts me, I'm telling you that something has affected me, and you're doubling down on your behavior and why you think it's okay, or why you're justifying your behavior versus acknowledging that this has been painful. And I'm not talking about making someone change who they are as a person. What I'm saying is this: if someone has poor communication skills, right? If that's a thing, and I address that, and you're telling me the reason why you have poor communication skills, right? Or you are telling me that, hey, I'm a bad communicator. You are looking for ways to justify your behavior versus figuring out a way to rectify the issue, right? Which lets me know that you're more concerned about your ego and being comfortable with how you behave versus making some uncomfortable changes in order to sustain the relationship. Because I'm not asking for anything that's outside of who you are. I'm just asking for better treatment, right? Guys, mind the buzzsaws because they're out there today going at it. So we're going to do our best here. But it's important to understand, one, what we're seeking from relationships, but also what somebody is choosing to show up with. Like Anyala said, I don't get to tell people how to love me. I get to see how they love and choose if I want to participate. And if somebody's way of loving me is not really making any adjustments to how they behave, especially if they recognize that it affects me because I communicated that to them, then I'm not participating in that kind of love, because to me, that's not loving. That's not how I receive love, right? So what we have to do is get better at recognizing and saying this. Is this okay for me? Right? It may be okay for this person, but is it okay for me? And sometimes it's not. A lot of times it's not. But we think we have to make things okay for ourselves because it's okay for the person. Now, on the receptive end, the same people that you are communicating these feelings to, they may not like being treated that way. And sometimes that's important to ask yourself too. Would they be okay with me treating them the same way? And I can guarantee you that the answer is no. The answer is always going to be no. The reason why is because as people, we are so fixated on how we feel that we are not taking into consideration how we may impact others and how we make them feel. So with that information alone, you can just say to yourself, all right, cool. So why do I keep showing up? Who am I taking care of in this moment? Because truth be told, I'll tell you this. If you stick around in a place where somebody is treating you poorly, two things are going to happen. One, you're going to develop a high pain tolerance. You're going to learn to not trust yourself and how you feel. You are going to rationalize, aka you're going to acquiesce to abuse, but also you're going to teach this person that it's okay to treat you however they want to treat you. But also you're going to build resentment for that person, which means that the relationship is going to see its way out eventually. But the turbulence that is going to exist in the relationship is all dependent on what choice you make and how early or late you make it, right? So a lot of times we are sticking around in places we know we shouldn't be in, or we're not communicating or expressing our feelings. And honestly, that's only making things worse. Okay. And you telling yourself that these things are okay when in actuality they're not, you're diminishing your own self-trust. And so much so we want quote unquote closure from people, right? We want people to say how they feel about us, but at the same time, we're always talking about actions speak louder than words. You got to pick a face, because someone's actions, if they do speak louder than words, then you shouldn't be seeking closure. You shouldn't be seeking a last conversation to make a choice about the relationship, because up until this point, this person has communicated how they felt about you. Okay. The threshold that we have for disrespect and maltreatment is kind of absurd. And I'm not saying that you have to walk through life and cutting everybody out. That's not the goal. For me, it's not, but again, what I've just accepted and understood and realized is that there are certain things that I don't want to exist in. There are certain painful experiences that I don't want to have. So I think we have to accept and understand why it is that we haven't made the necessary adjustments in the relationships when we recognize that we are not being taken care of. One, there's this fear of looking like the bad guy. That's a big one. So we say, oh yeah, they have this going on, or, I know they've been going through stuff and, or they're just not good at communicating. That's just how they are. And what you're doing is you're gaslighting yourself. You are literally conditioning yourself to show up to be mistreated. Right? Oh, it's not so bad. It's not a big deal, but it is, right? It's definitely a big deal. It's just that you're afraid to address it. But one of the things you have to ask yourself, would this person be okay being treated the way that they're treating me? The answer is no. Okay. And a lot of times other people may tell you, oh yeah, well, they will try to justify their behavior. Sometimes it's important to listen to people when you express a certain concern, right? If they're a third party, for example, and you express a concern, and the person seems to align with that behavior. And it's a universal thing. It's not just kind of this isolated incident, right? But it's a universal kind of behavior that's not okay. Let's say ghosting, for example. And someone's like, oh yeah, well, this, and this, and they give you reasons as to why it's okay. Pay attention to that, because that person just told you, one, that's treatment that they are willing to accept, but also that's treatment that they are willing to exhibit or that's how they move through life with people, right? Sometimes we have to pay attention to how somebody responds to our pain. Okay. And I'm not saying that somebody has to agree with you on everything. Someone can offer you perspective and be objective, right? For me, when I talk to people, I don't play devil's advocate, but I do like, I enjoy giving, offering up a different perspective outside of just the tunnel vision that somebody may have. Okay. So if somebody's telling me how they feel about somebody's literal disrespect, I'm like, yeah, that's not a vibe. That's not okay at all. You shouldn't, that's not something you should exist in. Versus if somebody is just kind of going off the handle and they're venting and it's like, well, what about this? Have you considered this? Right? What about when you were in this situation? Okay. A lot of times people have excuses for their behavior and they want you to excuse it as well. Right? People are comfortable being who they are, so they have the expectations that everybody else around them should be comfortable with it too. Right? We are always looking for comfort. We are always looking for comfort. But that does not mean that you have to be comfortable being mistreated by someone just because they're comfortable mistreating you. Okay. It gets to a certain point in time, you have to ask yourself, what am I sticking around for? What am I hoping for? Am I hoping for this person to change before I do? Because that would be easier on me. That will be more comfortable for me, right? If they made the choice to change first, right? But also ask yourself, would they be okay with me treating them the same way? A lot of times the answer is no, I can promise you. And if somebody is telling you how poor of a communicator they are, take that. Right? Take that as information and take that as law. Someone just told you that they recognize their behavior and how it's inconducive to a healthy relationship. They're aware of their behavior. They've just made you aware of their behavior. So now you are aware of their behavior. What will you do with that information? At some point in time, we seriously have to stop waiting for other people to be better. And we have to make better choices for ourselves. Duality, right? I could accept two things at one time. I could accept that you show up as who you are and you have these experiences. I could also accept that who I am and my experiences has reminded me that I am seeking something different. And we do not have to exist in a relationship, right? I don't have to hate you first to love myself more. Okay? I don't have to hate you at all. I can just recognize when it's all said and done, this relationship is not going to be good for one of us. And in turn, is not going to be great for either of us, because if I'm on the receptive end of poor treatment, after a while, become resentful, right? The love that I have for you is kind of dwindling now. I don't see you the same. And that's now going to create this disconnect in terms of our relationship moving forward. You're going to be seeking the same from me, and I am not going to want to be around you. Okay? So you have to stop yourself. And again, stop developing such a high pain tolerance. You know, a lot of times people are saying these things out loud, but they're not willing to make the uncomfortable changes. That's why they exist in the relationships. Oh, maybe it'll get better. No, you'll just get better at tolerating the poor behavior. And that hurts you, right? When we make an adjustment, the other person does not have to follow suit, but we have. Okay. And that's an opportunity for our growth. It's important that we're not always pointing fingers in a relationship, right? Because it takes two people for a relationship to work. And if there's an imbalance in a relationship with no adjustments being made, then it takes two people to make that relationship work, which means that you are also showing up to sustain this unhealthy relationship. So it's not the other person at the end of the day, it's now you. Okay? We have to hold ourselves accountable, because the more we hold ourselves accountable, the more we can trust ourselves in uncomfortable situations to make the decisions necessary for us to grow as people. All right. The more you wait, the more you tolerate, the less you are able to trust yourself, the less you're able to see yourself in a healthy way, and the more baggage you show up with in your new relationships, the more incapable you are moving forward of having healthier relationships. Right? We know why we do things a lot of times. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to let this person go. Well, what are you holding on to? Because there doesn't seem to be much that you're really gaining from the relationship. You're holding on to this idea of who this person is and who you want them to be, not who they are. Because if you were holding on to who they are, you would see that and you would decide, all right, cool, this relationship is not for me. Emotional health is a real thing, and sometimes we have to understand that we are truly making ourselves sicker. All right, if you have a conversation, understand that that's not always comprehension. And you may communicate a certain thing multiple times, but you get to decide what's enough for you. Don't let other people decide what you should be comfortable with because they are comfortable dishing it out. Because I can promise you, a lot of those people will not be okay with the same treatment. Okay? I'm gonna keep this short because the noise pollution is killing me. But as Valentine's Day approaches, I just want you to ask yourself: do I love myself? If so, how do I show that? Do I show that by extending my pain tolerance? Do I show that by accepting mistreatment that I don't want? Or do I accept that by making necessary choices even when they're uncomfortable? Do I acknowledge the love I have for myself by expressing my concerns and how I feel about how I'm being treated? Right? Do I advocate for myself in a healthy way? Right? And remember, it's not me versus you, it's you and me versus the problem. And sometimes someone's character is the issue. And it's not necessarily about them as much as it is about them. It's about recognizing that this relationship doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me. And I don't have to be the recipient of your poor relationship hygiene just so you can feel okay about it. All right. So that's all I got for you guys. I hope you have an amazing Valentine's Day. I'll be dropping a little night owl short. Yeah, surprise. I'll be dropping that on Valentine's Day. And just a little something fun. I'm excited to share with you guys. And I am really getting back on my night owl writing grind. I've been writing a lot, but definitely going to get back in this night owl swing and just bring you guys some more video content because that's been my goal this year. And I'm truly sticking to it. So, yeah, with that being said, take care of yourselves. Like, truly take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Sign up for Patreon and become an Apple subscriber. You get the Bird Brain Podcast merch. You can get the coloring book that's out. You can sign up for coaching, one-on-one coaching with myself, and we can work through some things. And I think that's it. I really think that's it, guys. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Happy Valentine's Day to all. Happy Love Day every day. Just take care of yourselves. All right. Find a way to acknowledge what you need and who you are, and be proud of yourself. And if you're not proud of yourself yet, here's an opportunity to take a step toward it, because we can't expect people to love us more than we love ourselves. We can't expect people to see us more than we see ourselves. Okay. So, yep, that's all I got. Take flight.